Why can some people take control of us with just one look? They know how to find what we need and they give us exactly that. A seductive person is not a hunter of emotions. They are a reader of emotions. In the first few minutes, they understand what you are looking for and they give you that. At that moment, your mind stops analyzing. It only feels. So, seduction means reading the emotional gaps inside another person. A seductive person usually uses two fixed patterns. Pattern number one is mirroring. This means they reflect your behavior, your tone, even your interests. If you speak calmly, they speak calmly too. If you are full of energy, they become full of energy too. This makes your brain feel that this person is just like you, as if you found the twin soul. But the truth is, this similarity is created on purpose. Pattern number two is love bombing. This means a lot of attention, constant messages, and a feeling of being seen, a feeling you have been waiting for years. This intense attention creates a chemical effect in the brain. Dopamine rises, and the brain becomes dependent on this person as a source of pleasure. Here is the key point. This fast attachment is not natural. Real relationships form slowly. After this stage, the attention drops, just enough to make you worried. This pattern is called intermittent reinforcement, meaning sometimes it is very warm and sometimes it is cold. The human brain reacts more strongly to irregular rewards than to steady ones. That is why people become more attached to a seductive person, because the brain keeps waiting for that good moment it experienced before. This is exactly the same mechanism seen in gambling and addiction. Uncertainty creates excitement, and excitement gets mixed up with love. But why does a seductive person behave this way? That's actually the more important question. People who feel an excessive need to win others over have often lost their sense of control or self-worth somewhere in their life. Seduction becomes a tool to prove their existence again. When they see someone anxiously waiting for their attention, they feel powerful, and that feeling of power fills the empty space of their self-esteem. Some of them don't even realize they're doing this. They simply learn this is how to be seen and loved. But others act more consciously. For them, the relationship is a game, and the real thrill is having control over the other person's emotions. These people usually lose interest once they see the other person has become fully attached, because there's no challenge left. Here is an important point to understand. A seductive person does not always intend to cause harm on purpose. Many of them truly believe they're giving love. That is why their behavior swings from intense affection and sudden coldness, not because of a plan, but because they themselves are used to this same rhythm. Now let's talk about someone who has been affected by this pattern. The first sign is that you can't get this person out of your thoughts even when their behavior is unclear. The second sign is that your self-esteem becomes tied to their reaction. One warm message from them makes your whole day, and one silence from them ruins it. The third sign is that you're constantly making excuses. You cover their strange behavior with sentences like, maybe they're just busy, or maybe I'm being too sensitive. These excuses show that your mind is trying to balance reality with the hope that has been built up. Here is an important psychological point. A seductive person usually knows exactly when to pull back. This pulling back is not random. It happens right at the moment they sense the other person is starting to feel secure. Security is dangerous for this pattern because security means less dependency. That's why sometimes right when you think the relationship has become stable, a sudden distance appears. This distance activates your brain's reward system again and pulls you back into that same state of waiting and anxiety. Now, this question comes up. Why are some people more drawn to this behavior than others? The answer lies in attachment history. People who received love inconsistently during their childhood, meaning sometimes full of attention and sometimes ignored, unconsciously search for the same pattern when they grow up, because their brain equates this rhythm with love. Here's a point that doesn't get talked about enough. A seductive person is often chasing a feeling of validation that never feels like enough. That's why after every relationship, they move on to a new one. Not because they love variety, but because their inner emptiness can never be filled by just one person. To start distancing yourself from this pattern, the first step is recognizing the behavior. When you notice a relationship swinging between intense warmth and sudden coldness, that is not a sign of safety. The second step is learning to tell the difference between intensity of emotion and depth of emotion. Intensity appears quickly and fades quickly. Depth forms slowly and stays steady. Here's another point that helps you recognize this pattern better. Not all seductive people are the same. Some are emotional seductors. They draw you in through conversation, deep listening, and showing understanding. They usually say things like, "No one has ever understood me like this before," and that one sentence is enough to make the other person feel they found a rare connection. Others are physical seductors. They create quick attraction through physical closeness, touch, and long lingering looks, engaging the mind before logic even has a chance. And there is a third group, which we could call social seductors. They create attraction through status, confidence, and the attention other people give them. When you see everyone gathered around them, you unconsciously think they must have something special. All three types, in the end, reach the same point. They are all targeting the same need, just through different doors. Here's something that should be made clear. Being attracted to someone is not a bad thing by itself. The problem starts when that attraction combines with insecurity. A healthy relationship can also be full of excitement, full of attention, full of strong emotion. The difference is that in a healthy relationship, the excitement comes from security, not from the lack of it. That means when the other person pays attention to you, you feel good. But when they don't, you don't panic that the relationship is falling apart. But in a relationship with a seductive person, the excitement comes from instability, from never being sure where you stand. It's this instability that keeps your mind constantly occupied, making you think about them more, not because of the depth of the relationship, but because of its uncertainty. Now, this question comes up. Can you spot this pattern from the very beginning in a normal conversation? The answer is yes, if you pay attention to the speed and intensity, not just the content of what's said. A seductive person usually moves into deep layers very quickly. They talk about their feelings early on. They ask you to share your feelings early on. And they quickly use words like special, different, rare to describe you. This speed feels natural, but the truth is, real intimacy takes time. When someone shows depth in the very first conversations that usually takes weeks or months to build, that is not a good sign. Another sign is watching their reactions. If you notice their words are perfectly tuned to trigger your strongest emotional response, it means they are reading your feelings. To recognize this pattern in yourself, you need to answer one simple question. Does this relationship make you feel stable or not? Stability means you can predict things, meaning the other person's behavior stays logical and reliable over time. Now, you might ask, why do some seductive people still get trusted even after their behavior has been exposed? The answer lies in the language they use. These people are usually very good at explaining their behavior in a way that there is always a logical reason for every inconsistency. This ability to justify comes from high emotional intelligence, but that same intelligence, when it's under someone's control, becomes a tool to confuse the other person. That's why sometimes, even when you notice strange behavior, the explanation is so convincing that you set aside your own doubts. Learning to trust your gut feeling more than a beautiful explanation is one of the most important skills that protects you against this pattern. When you stay in a roller coaster relationship with a seductive person for a long time, your mind slowly learns to get its value from the outside. This means you no longer can tell on your own whether you feel good or not. It depends on how that person behaved today. This dependency slowly takes away your self-confidence because you have no fixed standard to measure yourself by. Everything gets measured against someone else's reaction. Even after the relationship ends, this mental habit usually stays. After this experience, a person often looks for the same intensity in future relationships because calm and stability start to feel boring. This is one of the reasons many people get drawn into similar patterns after a relationship with a seductive person, not because they didn't learn their lesson, but because their brain is still searching for that same familiar feeling. Here's another important point. You need to tell the difference between seduction and real charm. Real charm comes from inner stability. A person who is comfortable with themselves doesn't need constant attention to feel worthy. Their behavior stays the same over time whether you like them or not. But seduction always has a goal: getting a reaction, getting attention, getting approval. That's why if you pay close attention, a seductive person's behavior changes depending on the audience, but a person with real charm shows the same version of themselves no matter who's watching. This simple difference is one of the most reliable ways to tell these two apart. Finally, to sum up this topic, the goal of recognizing this pattern is not to become distrustful of relationships, it's to become more careful in your choices. Anyone might show a seductive behavior once in a while, but what really matters is the repeating pattern, not a single behavior. Once you learn to tell the difference between real attention and targeted attention, between stability and instability, you stop being a victim of momentary emotions. In the end, a seductive person is neither a devil nor a genius. They're simply someone who learned to fill their own empty space by reading other people's needs. Understanding this mechanism gives you a power you didn't have before, because once you can see the signs, you stop surrendering to your emotions and you start choosing instead.